the game of the week. That is the Buffalo Bills. They are favored by 4.5 going to the Miami Dolphins. Both teams 2-0, both in the same division. But I do think Miami will keep it close. Their defense is for real. Alrighty, well, welcome back to Shut Up and Ball. I am Aaron, accompanied by Mr. John Harris, of course. We are back to do our Week 3 picks against the spread. After a eventful week 2, we had, I think, at least 9 differences. John came out on top. He got 2 more games than I did. Like I said in the previous video, afternoon slate absolutely killed me. So John's going into week 3, 15-17. I'm going into it 13-19. So we're pushing that 500 line, and obviously we're going to start with the Thursday night game to kick us off, which is the Cleveland Browns. They are at home at Cleveland with that elf in the middle of their field, which once again, we didn't talk about last episode, but I don't know why. I'm sure
apparently the fans voted on it, and if they want it, I think it's at least a little bit more creative than just a helmet. So so be it.
But their mascot's like what, a dog called the Dog Pound, but they're named after a color, and now they have an elf on their like.
The fans wanted it. I have to imagine a dog was an option, and they didn't vote for it.
Then they call themselves the Dog Pound. Anyway, whatever the heck you want to call yourself, the Elves or the Dog Pound, whatever Cleveland is gonna abide by. The Browns, they're at home and they're favored by 3.5, hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously, Jacoby Brissett at quarterback there. But yeah, how do you foresee this game going out, John? And once again, sorry, before I throw it to John, you don't know how spread works. It's 3.5 point spread, so Cleveland has to win by 4 or more. If we were to pick Cleveland, one of us, that's how Cleveland wins against the spread. Otherwise, if Cleveland wins by 3 or less, or Pittsburgh wins at all, and Pittsburgh technically is the winner via the spread. So sorry for that quick interruption, John. Go ahead. What are your thoughts on the Thursday night game?
Well, first off, offensively, I think this one could be a little bit ugly outside of like Nick Chubb, pretty much. And maybe Najee Harris if the Browns offensive line can create any sort of room. But other than that, the quarterback play with Jacoby Brissett, Mitchell Trubisky, not the premier quarterback play that you're really wanting. I don't know if you saw the marketing for this game, by the way, but going into it, it was I assume it's supposed to be Myles Garrett and TJ Watt. TJ Watt gets hurt, so now it's Myles Garrett versus Cameron Hayward. And I think Cameron Hayward's a great player, but he's not like a very marketable player. So just a very interesting matchup. Anyway, I'm going with the Steelers here. This is 2 weeks in a row. Well, actually, no. So last week they were the underdog and they didn't cover. But the opening week against the Bengals, they were the underdog and they did cover. And I just sort of got this weird feeling that this is going to be a year just like last year where if I pick against the Steelers when they're the underdog, it's going to come back to bite me in the butt. For anyone who doesn't know, last year, if the Steelers were the underdog, they often, for the most part, covered. And when they were the favorites, they didn't. I'm just kind of rolling with that same logic here. I don't really believe in the Browns offense, Jacoby Brissett, all of them, despite the fact that TJ Watt's not there, to be able to separate themselves from the Steelers, because I still think the Steelers defense will keep them in it. And I think that Najee Harris and the wide receiver weapons they have over there, they can at least put up some sort of fight. So I'm going to go with the Steelers. Don't know who wins this one. Really don't know. I feel like the spread's 3.5, but I think it's kind of the flip of a coin. But I'm going to go with the Steelers just because I got that feeling in my gut about them and the fact that when they're underdogs, I feel like they're going to cover.
All right. Well, last week I was scared to pay against Pittsburgh because I have this weird curse, like you mentioned last year. But it worked out for me last week, and I'm going with it again. I'm going with Cleveland here to cover. I just think, especially with no TJ Watt for Pittsburgh. We saw last week, New England, not the best offense, but they were able to find ways to move the ball. And granted, except for maybe the quarterback position, I think Cleveland's offense is more talented and better outside of, obviously, and even then, Jacoby Brissett, not terrible. And once again, I think we've seen the kind of a common theme is with some of these backups and replacement guys is if you put some solid pieces around them, solid game plan, they can do things. And he had a pretty good game last week. It's just the offense they just, as we all know, messed up a lot of things to let the Jets win that game. But otherwise, and I will say that does worry me, is maybe that might factor in for Cleveland too. It might be one of those things where one loss turns into two because you really haven't psychologically gotten over the last game, and it's a short week. But I just have no faith in the Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line. I think they are the new kings of one of the worst offensive lines in the league, or probably the worst. And I think we've just seen Najee Harris. It's not his fault, but he's just been ineffective, basically. And I mean, really just outside of just getting some screens or short passes or even sweeps to their dynamic wide receivers, there's just not much flow to this offense. I know I've criticized Cleveland's defense for being simplistic, but I just don't think it matters at this point. I think that Cleveland front four is going to have a field day, and Mitch Trubisky's going to be running for his life. And as much as I'm a kind of Mitch Trubisky defender, he probably will make a mistake or two. Or if not, I just don't think there's many ample opportunities for him to make plays against this Cleveland team. And on the flip side, I think Cleveland going to definitely probably play a little more conservative, close to the vest, just run the ball, maybe take a few shots with Jacoby Brissett, depending on the coverage. And Pittsburgh already losing a safety too, when DeMonte Casey got, I think it was in the substance. I don't know. But nonetheless, he'll be out. So their defense is already missing more and more pieces as we go along. So we'll have to see. But I think Cleveland wins, and I think they cover the spread. For me, it's just I got to see it to believe it for Pittsburgh. And honestly, I'm going to keep betting against the offensive line there, at least until TJ Watt gets back. So we saw week one, the defense was able to carry the load like they did last year. I just think that, especially without him, I don't think they can do that. So that is the Thursday night game. Now we move on to the Sunday games with the noon or early games, depending on your time zone, noon Central Standard Time. We're going to go to a game between two desperate 0-2 teams here. The Las Vegas Raiders, they are favored by 1.5. They're going to Tennessee. Obviously, Tennessee also 0-2. Both teams coming off to pretty bad losses. Obviously, the Raiders, they let that one go against the Cardinals late in the game, and Tennessee just got manhandled basically Monday night. So, John, how do you feel? Basically, which one of these teams will walk away with their first win of the season?
I'm going to go with the Las Vegas Raiders. I don't feel confident in either of these teams because both have just had some pretty big moments of concern. But I think I'm a little bit more concerned about Tennessee's ability to score the ball. At least for Las Vegas, they've put up points. They just haven't resulted in wins. And they've been close losses. Like, honestly, both of those games they very easily could have won. Against the Chargers, they're a very good team. And against the Cardinals, who, I mean, were a playoff team last year. But take that for what you will, because this year, I don't know, we got concerns. But regardless, I think that the Raiders, with Devontae Adams, Darren Waller, even Josh Jacobs looking really good to start this season. Hunter Renfrow, I mean, he had the fumble, and he hasn't had the greatest start this season, but he's still a talented slot receiver. I just feel more confident in their offense's ability to score versus the Titans right now, because of the Titans, Derrick Henry just hasn't gotten going yet, and that's where the offensive system really relies upon. And so I'm worried about their ability to move the ball. I think this could be a bounce back game for him because I don't think the Raiders' run defense is strong enough to like really, hinder him, sort of like the Bills were. But at the same time, I don't know. The Giants also don't have the most impressive of front sevens outside of like a couple of the guys on the defensive line, like Leonard Williams, but like their linebacker core isn't super great. So I don't know. We'll see, but I'm going to go with the Raiders because, like I said, if this does turn into a shootout, I prefer their weapons. And if it's close, I still think that their passing attack is what's going to get them over the edge. So I'm going to go with the Raiders, but knowing my luck, this is going to be my week where I get all my games wrong, and it's going to start with King Henry just demolishing me.
Yeah, it sucks for Tennessee, obviously, to no Taylor Lewan, and I'll pull up the injuries for the rest of the games. I'm sorry, I forgot about that. But I'm going with Tennessee here. Like we said, it's 1.5 point spread, so basically a pick 'em at this point. I just think that they'll fix things on defense. Yes, they got clobbered by the Bills, but I think we've seen the Bills are just probably, in that upper echelon of the teams in the NFL. And Tennessee's been known to start slow, even under the Mike Vrabel era too. And I mentioned, I think, last pod, not sure if Derrick Henry is doing his usual, takes a couple weeks for him to get going, or if that foot injury last season is slowing him down at this point. Obviously, we'll have to wait and see. But nonetheless, I just think Tennessee, especially Mike Vrabel going up against Josh McDaniels, both New England guys. I'm sure Mike Vrabel has been kind of knows what Josh is going to want to do on offense. Probably going to look at what the Cardinals did last week, how they took away Devontae Adams, because as we all saw, Devontae didn't really do much. Had the one touchdown, but he had like 2 catches for 12 yards. And he's considered a top receiver in the NFL. And I just think that they'll find ways to take him away and be able to take Waller away. And I once again, I wish I should have pulled up the injury report, because I know Hunter Renfrow is questionable for this game. So all of a sudden now you only have to focus on 2 guys on that offense. And I don't think that the Raiders' running attack and their offensive line is good enough to take advantage of the Tennessee run defense. So, yeah, and it ultimately falls to the other side of the ball, which I am scared about, because, like you mentioned, Tennessee has not been great offensively. Obviously, they're missing the explosive element of A.J. Brown, or just the reliability of him. But I would expect, especially after last week, like I said, I think they're going to find more ways to get Robert Woods and Treylon Burks involved. And I expect to... Last game kind of got away from them very quickly. They weren't really able to be patient and establish the run. And I expect they'll be able to do so this week. And I'm probably got a lot of flack from our Raiders fans. Already did in our preview before the season, but just don't think there's many difference makers outside of Max Crosby and maybe Chandler Jones. But especially the way Tennessee's probably going to run the ball, since they're missing Taylor Lewan, probably going to be a lot of interior runs. And I just don't think the Raiders have a good enough inside run defense to stop that. And I think Derrick Henry will probably get going, put that defense in a bind, and they'll be able to hit them with their patented play action over the top. So, yeah, and the fact that Tennessee's at home, that's a little bit towards where I'm leaning, just in terms of that. So, second disagreement already on the board there for John and myself. Now we're going to probably the game of technically the week, but it's not being sold as so. But it's turned out to be that way, and that is the Buffalo Bills. They are favored by 4.5, going to the Miami Dolphins. Both teams 2-0, both in the same division. So yeah, John, who are you rolling with for this AFC East matchup?
I'm going to go with the Bills, just going to keep it short and simple. They have not proven me wrong yet. They have been dominant against very good teams in the Rams and the Titans. Well, good teams last year. I still think they can both be good this year. More confident in the Rams, but that's a whole other story. And for the Dolphins, I think that they're kind of riding high off this game against the Ravens, but I think that Buffalo defensively is so much stronger than the Ravens because, like you mentioned in our reactions to week 2, the Ravens, they just kind of got aggressive late when they didn't need to. Buffalo is the polar opposite. They did not blitz a single time against Matthew Stafford. And so considering that, I think if they do that, it's going to be interesting because, with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, they have a lot of speed, and that's amazing, but that speed can't be utilized as much when a team is so committed to stopping you from being able to beat them over the top, so committed to stopping you from allowing one of those guys to go one-on-one, and so they're going to put a lot of people in coverage. But then on the other side too, the offensive line isn't that strong, so they don't even have to blitz. The Dolphins' offensive line, they've improved for sure. Like Teron Armstead and Connor Williams, they're massive improvements, but I still just worry about who's going to stop Von Miller. I don't think that Teron Armstead in his current age and form is going to be that guy. And if he does stop Von Miller, they'll just put Von on the other side because we've seen them mix around Von on one side, Rousseau on the other, Boogie Basham. I mean, all three of them can kind of interchange on whatever side they're going on. And so I just have concerns about Miami. And like I said, as of right now, Buffalo is just decimating teams. It hasn't been close in either of their games. And so until anybody proves to me that they can compete with Buffalo and keep it close, I'm going to go with Buffalo.
Not really any notable injuries. A lot of guys questionable. Dane Jackson obviously had that scary neck injury Monday. He's already listed as questionable. And then both their safeties listed as questionable for the Bills also, Poyer and Micah Hyde. So that could be something to watch. And then especially, dealing with these speedsters. And then their center Mitch Morse, who I believe also exited last game. He's questionable. And defensive lineman Ed Oliver. And then for the Dolphins, really, it's Teron Armstead questionable, Xavier Howard, and Cedric Wilson. But so we'll see the stats on those guys. But I'm rolling. Let me double check. Actually, so I think Buffalo will win this game, but I do think Miami will keep it close. I mean, their defense is for real. However, it does concern me, like you're kind of alluding to even in previous years. Josh Allen's gotten the better of this defense and never really had any issues. So that could be definitely a real thing. I just think, especially, regarding their safety injuries, I wouldn't be shocked if they had. It's just that Miami has better ways to control the clock. Probably gonna, just I guess in terms of kind of chew clock, just play possession. That's what they kind of already do. And it wasn't totally like I said, the Ravens got aggressive and they were already down double digits. They had to start really forcing the ball downfield. I think that will be part of their game plan. Will be just, like I said, hold the ball, not let Josh Allen get the ball and get that offense going, give their defense more time to rest and adjust. I just think that they'll try to make this an ugly game. I think Josh Allen, the gang will still, and the Bills will still find ways to score. Like you mentioned, they're just on a roll right now in the Bills. So I'm kind of threading the needle here, but I'm going Miami. Kind of got to see. Once again, I'm only going Miami to cover the spread. I think Buffalo wins, but I just think that Tua, I kind of see him. Yes, he had a great game last week, but you could definitely say that was his best game as a pro, and by far. And once again, I kind of said in the reactions, like the Ravens kind of played into their hands, kind of messed up some situations. And like you mentioned, the Bills, very well coached. And I think I saw they had like a 6% blitz rate, which is like very, very low. But yet they're still finding ways with their front four to get after the quarterback. And like I mentioned before, very deep in that too. So even if they don't have Ed Oliver, still have Jordan Phillips. We all know he's a massive man, and a bunch of others.
Huge.
Yes. Huge. And then, obviously Von Miller. They still have guys like AJ Epinesa, who, has been solid, kind of like we all expected. Gregory Rousseau, who has popped in moments. And Basham as well has had some moments as well. And then they have, a few other guys. But I am a little worried about the corners of the Bills just because they are young. There's still no Tre'Davious White. Kyer Elam still kind of finding his footing, especially with Dane Jackson possibly out. There could be some mix-ups, but I think as long as the two safeties are there, Buffalo will be fine. So long story short, going Miami, but I believe Buffalo wins this one. So there I go, threading the needle there. Third disagreement for John and I already. But now we are going to move on to another AFC matchup, not divisional one though. It's going to be the Baltimore Ravens. They are favored by 3.5 off that disappointing loss to Miami. They're going to New England. So obviously New England, the underdog here. Let me see if I can pull up the injuries. Sorry. Once again in Foxborough, expected to be sunny weather. Any notable injuries? J.K. Dobbins questionable. So he might get his first appearance for the Patriots. Jacoby Myers questionable, and Kyle Duggar as well questionable. Technically, Lamar Jackson's questionable, but I think we know he's going to play. So, just saying.
Also, I don't think they have it on there, but I think Damian Harris is questionable. I'm a fantasy owner, so I know that.
Not on ESPN, but I trust you. So that's on ESPN.
I know he got hurt last week. I can't remember if he came back into the game. A day ago, he reported that he was fine. So I think he'll probably play, but just something to keep an eye on because you maybe just could get more Ramondre Stevenson in this game. Regardless, I'm going with the Baltimore Ravens here. Same with this past game, or the Buffalo-Miami game, or sorry, not the Buffalo-Miami game, the Las Vegas-Tennessee game, where I worry about Tennessee's ability to score. I worry about New England's ability to score. I mean, they've had some very close games, both low-scoring games, and so I think that they can do some things defensively, creatively to try and limit what Baltimore's going to want to do, but Lamar Jackson is just such a unique weapon that you can game plan all you want for it, but once he starts out there running, things just kind of go out the window. If anyone's going to be able to do it, you would think that Bill Belichick would have the mind for it, but I don't think that they're going to be able to contain Lamar specifically. And then on the other side of the ball, I think that Ravens defense is going to feel pretty embarrassed about what happened last week. Marlon Humphrey already tweeted about it, how bad of a performance it was. And so I'm expecting them to have a bounce back game. And yeah, Mac Jones, I mean, he's an all right quarterback, and he's going to do what he's going to do, but they just don't really have a ton of great weapons. And I saw some stat today about how when the Patriots allow over 24 points, I think they're like 2-10 with Mac Jones. But when they allow less than that amount of points, they have a great record. And so it's going to kind of come down to, do I believe the Ravens can score 24 points? I'm going to say yes. So I'm going to take the Ravens over the Patriots here. But at the same time, with Bill Belichick, it always feels like they're just waiting to backdoor cover me.
And that's what I'm betting on. I'm going with New England here. I have concerns about the Baltimore run game. Really, the only person that's really making any sort of difference is Lamar Jackson. I'm guessing they're getting Ronnie Stanley back since he wasn't on the injury report that I mentioned. But even then, they've had other issues along their line. Obviously, missing Juwan James week 1. He already got hurt, so they're already filling in there. The guards are still kind of fillers. Yes, they have the good center Tyler Linderbaum, but still a rookie and just one man. Baltimore's passing attack has been surprisingly effective, but I think too, especially with New England, they're going to probably call their bluff, be able to stop the run in terms of the running backs, because I think that's also been an issue, is just not having an explosive running back. Just kind of had they have I want to say Mike Davis. He's okay, and same with Kenyon Drake. Both these guys are just okay, as opposed to having a J.K. Dobbins, who we all know, especially at the end of his rookie year, started balling out, showing that he could be a difference maker. But even if he plays this game, I don't think he'll be 100%. So nonetheless, I just think it's going to be a close game. I think New England will find ways to move the ball. Baltimore's just, like we said last week, just naturally a little too aggressive. So there will be opportunities for Mac Jones and the gang to move the ball and maybe make some big plays like we saw last week with Aguilar. I think New England keeps it close. Wouldn't be shocked if they somehow pull off a win, but I think at the end of the day, Lamar is playing MVP caliber football. I think he'll do enough to carry this team to victory, but I just don't think it's going to be more than 3 points. Here I go. Threading the needle again. I think that's what cost me last week, but hey, I'll live and die by it. So that is Baltimore, New England, kind of keeping it in both of those divisions. We're going over to the Bengals, or they are favored, at least the Cincinnati Bengals. They are favored by 6.5 going to the New York Jets. Jets fresh off that huge win against Cleveland. So, John, are you still rolling with the Jets, or do you think it's time the Bengals turn this ship around, because they're surprisingly 0-2?
Well, I mean, if there's a bounce back game, it's got to be against the Jets. You're playing against Joe Flacco. I know he just beat the Browns. I know they looked solid against the Ravens defensively, but they're still the Jets. You still have a pretty significant talent advantage on them. They don't have their starting quarterback. There's just a lot going for you in this game. And so I do think the Bengals bounce back here, and I'm still picking the Jets to cover. They're at home. I think Jets fans are just going to be all riled up and crazy because it's been a very encouraging start to the season, and they just had a pretty crazy win against Cleveland. So I think the Jets have a lot going for them here. And for Cincinnati, at least, they just got to prove it to me. They got to prove it to me that they're starting to figure things out. Joe Burrow has just looked a little off. The offensive line has not been impressive, and so I think that guys like Quinnen Williams can still get pressure. And I don't know, Cincinnati, they have a decent defense. They're not terrible by any means. They stepped up really big time in the playoffs last year, but it doesn't feel like anybody's really popping right now. Like even Jesse Bates, he allowed that touchdown to Noah Brown last game. And so I don't know. I just feel like there's just certain matchups that the Jets, with the talent they have on offense, Breece Hall, stud rookie, you got Michael Carter, Garrett Wilson had a big game last week, Corey Davis, Elijah Moore, they have playmakers. And I think that Joe Flacco has proven through the first two games that he's not going to do anything to really cost you the game. And if certain moments arise, he can go out there and win you one. So I'm going to take the Jets to cover here. I don't know if they win, but They've put up some good fights so far, and that Ravens game, although the score didn't look super close, like we talked about in our initial reactions to week one, defensively they played really well outside of a couple plays that really broke the game down. And so I think as long as they can prevent a couple specific plays, like a deep Jamar Chase touchdown or a big Joe Mixon run, stuff like that, then I think the Jets can keep this one close. So I'm going to take them to cover.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have our first agreement of the week, because I am also going with the Jets. especially I have the injury report here. La'el Collins questionable. Hayden Hurst also questionable for the Bengals. For the Jets, we know Zach Wilson's out. Uzomah still questionable, former Bengal there. And then George Fant, their tackle, and John Franklin Myers, the DN, also questionable for the Jets. But an issue for this Bengals has been our offensive line. It has not been resolved since last year, and especially for the Jets, with the Jets coming in town, that is one of the Jets' strengths. Is their front four right now. Quinnen Williams, so Carl Lawson still coming back from that injury. But then they have, if he plays, John Franklin Myers, solid pass rusher, and obviously Jermaine Johnson also. So they have litany of guys to throw at Joe Burrow, and also their defense, been pretty solid. Like you mentioned, throughout the first few weeks, had a really solid game against Baltimore, held them to only 24 points. And that was just Lamar making a few great plays. And then even last week against a more talented Cleveland team, for the most part held their own, although, Cleveland scored that garbage time touchdown in 31. I just think, like I mentioned in the last pod, I think teams seem to be kind of all over Zach Taylor's concepts and tendencies. Wouldn't be shocked if Robert Saleh is also on top of that, and will definitely limit the explosive plays. I'm excited to see how much of Jamar Chase versus Sauce Gardner we're going to get, because that'll be kind of Sauce's first real trial by fire in terms of matching up against an elite guy. So that'll be fun. But end of day, I think Cincinnati does pull out this victory, but wouldn't shock me if the Jets, obviously I'm anticipating the Jets to keep it close, but wouldn't shock me if they somehow pull the upset, especially being at New York. And man, since he goes down 0-3 after this week, that's going to be tough for them. But nonetheless, I think the Jets keep this close. Like you mentioned, Joe Flacco's a veteran. I think he's been taking care of the ball pretty well, and also been taking advantage and being aggressive when necessary and when the opportunity has arisen, as we saw, with the big Corey Davis touchdown, and obviously, with the clutch drive to Garrett Wilson. So, we both going Jets there. Our first agreement of the week. Let's see how many more we can get. But now we move on to what was looking like to be on paper before the season looked like to be a great game. Right now, not looking like that is the case. And that is the Kansas City Chiefs. They are favored by 3.5 going to the Indianapolis Colts. Obviously, the Colts coming off, getting skunked 0 points in our last game. Chiefs getting 3 extra days rest from the Thursday night game. I'm trying to pull up the injury report right now. Got it. Let's see. So obviously their linebacker Willie Gay for the Chiefs suspended. Harrison Butker, their kicker, questionable. So is Mecole Hardman, their wide receiver. For the Colts, Michael Pittman is listed as questionable. Same with Alec Pierce. Although I think I saw both of them participate in practice today as of Wednesday. DeForest Buckner, Yannick Ngakoue, both questionable. And Shaquille Leonard, who has yet to make his debut, also questionable. So, John, do you think this is a game that the Colts can figure it out and turn it around, or are they going to potentially be in a very scary 0-3 hole also?
I do not believe in the Colts. I just feel like the Chiefs are too big of a beast for them to handle. So I'm going to go with the Chiefs here. I know it's at Indianapolis, but there's just too many problems that the Colts have shown so far that I just don't feel confident in their ability to stop Patrick Mahomes in that offense. I mean, Shaq Leonard, if he was there, that would be a big addition, but still, I don't think that they have the pass rush and the secondary needed to throw Mahomes off of his game. And offensively, Frank Reich in that offense, I have question marks, especially with the fact that Michael Pittman and Alec Pierce, I don't think they're guaranteed to play. So, I mean, if they're out, we saw last week they couldn't move the ball effectively through the air. If they're playing, there could be some lingering effects from the injuries. And even if they are, I just don't think that offense with Matt Ryan and the scheme that they play, which is very reliant on the run game, I don't think that they're going to be able to control the pace of the game enough to keep Kansas City off the scoreboard consistently. So I'm going with the Chiefs here.
Going with you too. I'm going with the Chiefs also. I nothing from Indianapolis has inspired me. I think their O-line, especially the tackles, seem to be sort of an issue for them, which is affecting everything else. They haven't been able to run the ball as effectively. And I mean, Matt Ryan hasn't been very good to be honest, at the beginning of the season. Let's just be honest there. He's made some mistakes. Obviously he hasn't had, all his guys around him, but that's part of it. And then the Colts defense too, obviously missing their kind of quarterback and Shaquille Leonard, especially against the Chiefs. You kind of need all hands on deck. And especially with the Chiefs getting 3 extra days rest, kind of stealing a game, against the Chargers too. I bet you they're probably it's one of those wins where I think you mentioned in previous podcasts where you won, but there's a lot to work on. And I'm assuming they went back to the drawing board on some things. And even if Michael Pittman plays, I suspect they're not going to let him cook them like Mike Williams did. They probably are good if they start going to him early. They'll probably take that away very fast. But otherwise, yeah, I have nothing else to mention. I think Chiefs will be able to slow down the run game, and on offense, I just don't see how the Colts will get enough stops. And yeah, like you mentioned, I'm not confident in the Colts being able to score enough with the Chiefs. You're going to have to score 20 plus to hang with the Chiefs, and I'm trying to think. The Colts even do that week 1? I'm not sure.
I think they tied that 20 points.
Oh, is that 20? It was 20. So they barely just scored 20 points. Yes. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, so we both have the Chiefs beating the Colts and covering there. So we'll see if we're right. If we are both right, we'll pick them. But now we go to a divisional matchup in the NFC between the New Orleans Saints. They are favored by 2.5 going to Carolina. So, John, who you got here between the Saints and your boy Matt Rule? I will pull up the injuries in just a second. Yeah.
Regardless of the injuries, I'm going with New Orleans. I mean, the only thing that could maybe change that would be Alvin Kamara not fully playing, but I feel like Vegas is smart enough that that's probably sort of baked into the spread just a little bit. So I think if Alvin Kamara fully gets confirmed, then the spread would move to maybe even 3.5 for the Saints. But if Kamara doesn't play, I still think the Saints would probably be favored because Carolina and Baker Mayfield, the offense, Ben McAdoo, just hasn't shown the ability to get McCaffrey involved enough, despite him playing a ton of snaps. And that's crazy because McCaffrey, he's heavily involved. But even DJ Moore hasn't had the greatest of games. And the Saints defense is coming off a really chippy game that they lost, a divisional game against Tampa. I think they're going to be fired up. I think Jameis is going to want to correct the mistakes he made at the end of last week. So I'm taking the Saints in a bounce back game here. Although I like Carolina, and although I think they could potentially upset them here, I don't know. I just think the motivation the Saints are going to have in this one's going to be too strong for Carolina to overcome the talent differential.
Yeah, just to quickly recap injuries, Kamara and Winston both questionable. So is Paulson and Debo and Marcus May, their cornerback and safety, and Taysom Hill also questionable, but who knows how much he'll get to play. Anyways, and then in regards to Carolina, there weren't many to begin with. Let's see. Dante Jackson, their cornerback's questionable. That's really about it at the moment. But in regards to who I'm picking, once again, I'm agreeing with you. I am going with the Saints. Carolina's line isn't that great. The Saints have a pretty darn good front four. I think they're going to give the Panthers a lot of issues there. And like you already alluded to, Ben McAdoo in this offense has not been very good, not very creative, and just getting Christian McCaffrey the ball in different ways. Arguably their best player. And even DJ Moore, the receiver they paid over this offseason to be obviously their number one guy. I'm not sure if it's a him and Baker connection, but as of right now, he really hasn't had much impact. And I don't put that on DJ Moore, and I don't think that's really on Baker. I think it's a lot to do with Ben McAdoo and his simplistic offense. Does worry me the flip side, though. Obviously, I think we both feel very highly of Carolina's defense. But I think, too, especially after last week, and Jameis had some late interceptions, although, they're used trying to win the game. So I can't really say that's on Jameis. And especially dealing with his injury, I wouldn't be shocked if they kind of, I don't say put the training wheels, but they're probably going to limit Jameis into his decisions, probably make some easy throws, just play ball control and let their defense do most of the work there. Maybe
go back to that Sean Payton, Drew Brees bread and butter short stuff. Quick slants to Michael Thomas. Shred him.
Yeah, to Michael Thomas. Sorry. Michael Thomas is such a mixed bag, because I have Michael Thomas in the league, and then we have our dynasty league where the guy that has Michael Thomas already has a stacked team. So it's It's such a mixed bag. Every time I'm like happy, and then I remember that and I get sad because I'm like if Michael Thomas is doing good, then because he has Cooper Kupp and Stephon Diggs, by the way, so it's like, oh great, so he has the three best, like, and Devontae Adams. Don't ask us how he got that team. Anyways, we're both going New Orleans here. We both feel like they'll win, so I believe that'll make Carolina 0-3. Right, they're one of the 0-2 teams. So yeah, not the start we're anticipating. It's not going to be the start that Matt Rule wanted for the Panthers, but Saints are the more talented team at this moment in time. So now we go to a less exciting game, and that is the Chicago Bears at Chicago. They are favored by 3.5, hosting the Houston Texans. So basically, John, while I pull up the injuries, do you think that the Bears will let Justin Fields play actually quarterback, or do you think Houston wins this one?
I don't know the answer to that question, and that's why I'm taking Houston. I would love for Justin Fields to just be unleashed and allow him and Darnell Mooney to even do some of what they did last year. I don't even think Cole Kmet has a catch on the season yet. Like,
he doesn't. I dropped him. In every league I had him, I dropped him.
I dropped him after week 1, so I didn't even get to see the week 2 disaster that happened. But yeah, no catches for him. Darnell Mooney had 1 catch for -4 yards last week. They're just not throwing the ball like at all. And after week 1, you thought, okay, maybe it's because of the rain, the weather. They play Green Bay and it's the same thing, and the weather was fine. So like, I don't know. I'm not betting on Chicago right now because of the fact that Justin Fields, and it doesn't look like they're allowing him to throw. And I don't know what I'm going to get out of that offense. And so I'm going to take Houston here. They've been in some close games recently. They've kept it competitive with 2 teams that both of us expected to be better than Chicago this whole year. And I don't know, even despite the fact that Denver has had their struggles and the Colts have not looked good at all so far, I still think that if they were playing against Chicago right now, I'd probably still take both of them. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Houston here. 3.5 points. Even if they lose, considering how close their other games have been, I'm going to take them to cover. But honestly, I think they're going to win because it's really just going to come down to, can Chicago's run offense carry them enough that they can overcome maybe like a Brandon Cooks touchdown and whatever Houston's going to do offensively. So, yeah, I'm going to take the Texans here.
All right, so back on the disagreement train. I'm going with Chicago. I have to imagine they're going to open up the playbook a little more, let Justin Fields play. Even so, regardless, like I mentioned for the Houston offense, I mean, although David Pierce had a solid game last week, in regards to their passing offense, is just take away Brandon Cooks, and they really don't have anybody else. And the Bears defense still like okay, it's not great. And Houston's defense is okay too. I just think at the end of the day, I'm hoping it's a close game at least, and then maybe especially being at home, and I would assume, especially if there's another half where Justin Fields has like 5 passes, the fans will probably, I'm assuming, going to start booing, and then that's going to, coach staff be like, okay, well, maybe we should let Justin Fields play quarterback, even because we spent 2 first-round picks on him and traded up for him. So at some point, like, I'm just kind of banking on the fact that at some point you got to let the man play. Like I said, literally play quarterback, because all the last few games, granted the first game's a little bit of caveat, is they were playing in a monsoon, but second game, like especially you're behind most of the game, I still don't understand why he only threw the ball 11 times. I think I saw...
The second game was worse. Like, he threw it 18 times in the monsoon.
Yeah, and then, and I saw the stat, I think Cooper Kupp has more, catches. He had like 29 catches than Justin Fields has pass attempts, which is 28. Which we all know Cooper Kupp's great, but come on. Like, in a passing league, and today, in 2022, that should not be happening. Unless, like, you're San Francisco and you're running on everybody, and you're blowing people out. That's understandable, but that hasn't been the case for Chicago. So,
I mean, I'm just going to repeat it. I said it in our reactions. Every other NFL team in the league has more completions than Justin Fields has attempts. And that can't all be a Fields thing. Like, sure, there's some plays where he is supposed to pass and he runs, but they're clearly just not calling a game plan for him to throw.
Yeah. So it feels kind of like he's still stuck in that Matt Nagy type mindset where they're just, I don't know, they're not even making an offense to help him who knows. But hopefully, for my pick's sake, Chicago can right the ship and let Justin Fields get loose and be free. So now we go though to your division, John, for interdivisional matchup. Actually, one of the two this weekend. And that is the Philadelphia Eagles. They are favored by 3.5 going to the Washington Commanders. It is a big Carson Wentz revenge game, facing a team that drafted him and then threw him aside. So, yeah, John, let me pull up the injuries. But while I do so, what are your thoughts and predictions on this one?
This game's really hard for me to pick because I don't know how to accurately judge either of these teams. Like Washington at the beginning, I thought, okay, like they look pretty good. And then they lose to Detroit. But still in that game, their offense was able to get things going. And then, and also the tough part is both of them played the Lions. So it feels like, okay, you got to kind of like compare the common denominator there. Philly beat them, but they also, they let up a lot of points. I don't know. It's just a very tough situation because I don't know if like Philly's like the real deal like yet, or if it's just kind of the competition they've played. Same with Washington. I don't know. I don't know how to accurately judge these teams through week 2. So I'm going to go with Washington here. They're the home team. I think I'm taking them to cover. I don't feel confident about it by any means. I've picked against Philly every single game. I'm 1-1 so far. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm taking Washington though, because I think that Philly's defense can be had in certain areas. And although the Vikings and Justin Jefferson weren't able to get much going, I think that crazily enough, Washington they have more depth at the wide receiver position. We've seen Terry McLaurin obviously already have an impact. We've seen Jahan Dotson and Curtis Samuel. And I think Curtis Samuel could be sort of the X factor here because I would expect Darius Slay to match up a lot with Terry McLaurin. And so now your creative, sort of chess piece of Curtis Samuel can be used in a lot of cool different ways to throw off that defense. So I'm going to take Washington, but these are the two teams that I think maybe it's just because they're in my division and they've both played the Lions that I have no idea how to accurately judge them, but I'm going Washington to cover. Hopefully it doesn't bite me in the butt.
All right. Well, another disagreement. I'm going with Philly. I think especially I have concerns about Washington's O-line. We'll see, in regards to the injury report that I pulled up, or once again per ESPN, so may not be entirely accurate as we've seen. Guard Trey Turner listed as questionable, and they lost their center Chase Roulier. They put him on injured reserve this week. The line was already kind of iffy to begin with, and especially against that Philly D-line, I just think they're going to wreak havoc on Wentz. And that's going to force Wentz to start doing Wentz things and not the good Wentz things, where I just feel like it's to be primed for 1 or 2 Carson Wentz interceptions where it's like, come on, Carson, why'd you force that? And on the flip side, I don't have much confidence in the Commanders' defense. I think we've seen that for the first 2 weeks. They just are way too simplistic, and especially since losing Chase Young, not getting much out of the pass rush. I mean, they still have Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne, but those two guys are more run stuffers. And then Montez Sweat's pretty good, but once again, he's not like elite, I would say. So, and there's only those 3. They don't have much depth behind those guys either. So, oftentimes those guys seem to be getting tired at the end of halves. And I just think with Philly, with their great O-line, they're just gonna be able to do whatever they want, and then it's gonna get to a point where, especially like they did against Minnesota, they ran the ball out first, and then Minnesota said, "Crud, like we got to stop the run. We got to start investing more guys up front." And Jalen Hurts has shown the ability to strike downfield, whether it be Tequez Watkins or AJ Brown or Devonta Smith, and Dallas Goedert's been really solid too. I just think basically, Washington's outmatched here, and I just think that Carson Wentz will make a few mistakes forced by Philly, especially, and I'm not sure what his mindset will be too. I'm worried that he's also going to be, feeling a little bit of pressure. Like, man, I really want to ball out against these guys for, throwing me aside after I helped win them a Super Bowl. And I just worry that he might really try to force things with that mindset. So, a disagreement for us. Another one of our many thus far. Speaking of Detroit, though, that's where we're going next. Well, not to Detroit, but to their game. Going to Minnesota, though, where the Vikings, fresh off that disappointing Monday night, they are at home. They're favored by 7.5, hosting the Detroit Lions. So, John, who do you have for this NFC North matchup?
I'm going to the Detroit Lions. They've just impressed me in both the games they've played so far. To where Minnesota, they impressed me in week 1, but they did not impress me in week 2. And sort of like we just talked about with those 2 NFC East teams both playing Detroit, both of these teams, Minnesota and Detroit, have played against Philly. And obviously Detroit, they were able to score a lot of points. Minnesota was not able to. And so to me, that indicates that I've already said this, but I think Detroit just has more explosive playmakers. We have not seen Dalvin Cook fully emerge yet. And maybe this could be the week, but we haven't really seen him be the Dalvin Cook of old. We saw Justin Jefferson have a great game against the Packers, but he got kind of locked up against the Eagles. I don't expect him to get locked up here. I think he has success, but I don't know. Detroit has impressed me so far. I think that DeAndre Swift, Amon-Ra St. Brown, TJ Hawkinson, all the guys they have on their offense, and even Jared Goff, I was blanking on his name. Their quarterback, Jared Goff, I think we're seeing that when you give him one of the best offensive lines in the league, because if anyone doesn't know, Detroit, I would view them probably as a top 3 offensive line in the NFL when healthy. I don't know if Frank Ragnow's not playing. He did miss last week. But anyway, even without him, with the tackles, because that's kind of mainly more important in pass protection. With your center, you can help a lot more like double teams and the running backs and all that. But with Jared Goff has time because of those tackles being so strong, we've seen that like they can call a safe offensive game plan and he can find his playmakers. And so he's smart. He's going to take care of the ball. Jared Goff doesn't make that many bad decisions. It's just he doesn't have any like game-breaking moments. But when you have guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown, DeAndre Swift, they can have the game-breaking moment on any play. So I'm going to take the Lions to cover here. I'm not saying they'll win because I think that Justin Jefferson could have a really monster performance against that secondary. But even last week, they looked better. Like Jeff Okudah actually had a really good game against Terry McLaurin. So you never know. Maybe Detroit's starting to kind of figure things out. And I don't know. They're bought in. They're bought into the Dan Campbell schemes.
Yeah, so Frank Ragnow as of right now listed as questionable for this upcoming week, same with their guard, Jonah Jackson. So we'll see what happens there. But nonetheless, I'm going with Detroit with you as well. Even if they don't win, I think they'll keep it close. Like you mentioned, this offense starting to come together. We're seeing the skill positions. They finally filled in the skill position / developed with Amon-Ra St. Brown, DJ Chark. I know he didn't do anything week 2, but had a really good week 1. Still a talented guy. And then obviously we know their 2 running backs, Swift, who should be healthier going into this game than he was last week, and he still had a few amazing plays last week. And then Jamal Williams, who's a really good all around back, and like you mentioned, Jared Goff, who like you just said, give him a good team around him, and he can shine also. Nonetheless, I think Minnesota obviously wins. I think because of their just on that side of the ball. I'm not sure how Detroit matches up with their wide receivers. We saw Irv Smith have some opportunities last week, and obviously we know Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen are great. So I just feel like although they probably will slow down the Vikings run game, make life a little bit difficult for the Vikings, I expect too the Vikings have a better just execution on their passing game. Had some miscues last week. Talked about the Slay pick that was kind of technically on Justin Jefferson because Jefferson admitted it was his fault there. We had the Irv Smith drop that was a walk-in touchdown basically. Like that's potentially 10 more points that would have made it a game last week that they just missed on. And I expect that they'll clean those things up and ultimately win this game. But I think Detroit will give them a fight here. I'm not sure if you feel that way. And I mean, obviously you pick Detroit, but I'm not sure if you think that they'll keep it close. But spread-wise,
yeah, I think they'll keep it close for sure. I think they cover, and I would not be shocked if they win. Yeah. I think it really just depends on does Justin Jefferson and Dalvin Cook have big performances? Because if they do, I think they're going to win the game. But if they don't, I think Detroit could sneak out with a win here.
But, yeah. So as long as they suppress, especially Justin Jefferson in the passing game, because that's what I'm more concerned about with their personnel, that could be an issue. But anyways. So that is that. We both got Detroit. Those are the early games. Actually, not a lot of later games going forward. So we'll do. But anyways, going to start with the first one here. It is the LA Chargers at LA, fresh off that disappointing Thursday night loss. They're favored by 9.5, hosting the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'll pull up the injuries in a second. But obviously we have Justin Herbert. He's still dealing with that rib issue, but he's expected to play. J.C. Jackson questionable. Keenan Allen questionable with his hamstring. So we'll see what happens there. Same with Corey Linsley. He had a knee injury he suffered Thursday night. So that could be something. And then in regards to Jacksonville, they actually don't really have really many key injuries actually at all. So John, who do you have here between this East and West Coast matchup?
I struggled with this one because I like Jacksonville, but it is at the Chargers. But then even that point, the Chargers don't really have a home field advantage because LA fans don't really turn out to games unless it's a Lakers or a Dodgers game. So this one was tough, but I'm going to go with Jacksonville here. I feel a little more confident that I know what I'm going to get in terms of health. And unfortunately, we picking these on Wednesday. So, we don't know if Herbert all of a sudden goes out. We don't know if Keenan Allen's not playing. We don't know the status of some of these people, how J.C. Jackson's going to play. So I'm going to go with Jacksonville just because the 9.5 point spread feels a little big. I think that they can back to recover here, and I think they have a good enough run game that they can penetrate the Chargers defense and get some stuff going. And I think that Doug Peterson is a smart enough head coach to be patient with it and continue to run because he knows that that's where the Chargers under Brandon Staley have historically not been the best on defense. So I don't think that he's going to try and have Trevor test that secondary too much in risky ways. So I'm going to go with Jacksonville here. I still think the Chargers win unless all of a sudden a drastic thing like Justin Herbert doesn't play. But I still think the Chargers win here, but I'm taking Jacksonville to cover just because the amount of injuries to key playmakers for the Chargers just worries me a little bit.
Yeah, I am worried about potentially just Keenan Allen not being 100% and Justin Herbert not being 100% too. It's something he's probably got those ribs or something he's probably going to be dealing with for some time. And Jacksonville's, I think, when the defense is kind of being slept on, they're started off really well. And like we've mentioned, they have a lot of talent. And they're, like I said, putting it together, it seems like. I think the Chargers probably will win this game, but I'll take the 9.5 points, and I'll take Jacksonville with that. I think it'll be a much closer game than it'll be within 9, obviously. And then 2, I am worried, though, obviously, because I think LA's defense we saw last week is for real. And, this is technically, especially with this new system, it is Trevor Lawrence's first game against a real, it's against at least this year, against a defense of this quality and this moment. Now Jacksonville's got to win. They finally are feeling good. Now, can you beat an elite team? I'm just not sure, and I'm scared that it's going to be like a close game and there's going to be like a pick 6 or something. Who knows? But I'm going to bet on the other side, though. Yeah, I'm going with Jacksonville. I think they'll keep this game close. I don't think they'll win. It will be a close one, though, and the Chargers ultimately prevail, especially after losing last week. And I think the 3 days rest does help, especially in regards to Herbert and Keenan Allen getting back on track. Hopefully Keenan get on the field for them too. I think that'll help in regards to their pass, just their offense in general. Hopefully they can get Austin Eckler going. He really hasn't. They haven't really been able to get the run game going this year, at least as of this date. So we'll see if the Chargers can right the ship there. But speaking of LA, we're going to the LA Rams. They are favored by 4.5. Had a double check. They're going to Arizona. Arizona Cardinals, fresh off that huge win last week. That crazy comeback, one of the few crazy comebacks. So, John, are you sipping the Arizona Gatorade, or are we going back to LA?
I'm going to take Arizona here because I think this game could turn into a shootout. The Rams defense has not impressed me so far. Buffalo, you kind of give them a pass. It's the first game of the season, and Buffalo is Buffalo. But the Falcons are able to have success, and I think that the Falcons are sort of like a knockoff version of what the Cardinals are. I think Drake London's like a little bit better than AJ Green at this point in AJ's career, but Marcus Mariota, he's going to move around, he's going to extend plays, he's going to use his legs. That's kind of where the run game is going to come from. I'm a little bit worried if James Conner doesn't play, but Arizona they've looked good against the Rams in the past. They've kept things close. They turn into shootouts in these games, and I think that Kyler Murray and his legs are going to keep it close. It's at home. I think Hollywood Brown's speed could potentially be an issue here because Jalen Ramsey's, he's still the best corner in the league, but he doesn't have that kind of level speed. And so, I don't know. He's been burnt like the last couple of games. I don't think he was burnt against the Falcons, but they don't have anybody that's like that kind of a burner. And so, I don't know. We'll see. I think obviously he's acutely aware of that, so he's not going to go out there and just like allow himself to get beat. But I think that the Cardinals and Cliff Kingsbury, as much as I don't like him, the one thing that Cliff is at least good at doing is creating plays that can turn into like a 50-yard bomb, because that's kind of all he did in college. So yeah, we'll see. I'm going to take the Cardinals to cover here though, just because I think this game turns into shootout out of necessity because I don't believe in the Cardinals defense to stop the Rams. And so I think the Cardinals offense is going to throw out everything they got.
I am not as high in the Cardinals offense. And I think especially if James Conner is not available. I think it makes them definitely one-dimensional. And the Rams are built mostly as a speed team. And especially after last year, the Cardinals had got the better of them, and especially in that first matchup, I expect the Rams, especially, they're 1-1. And last week, I think it's just, like I said, I think it's those turnovers really kind of killed them. Those late turnovers, block punt, interception by Stafford, and Cooper Kupp getting stripped. I just don't foresee, especially Kupp. I think that was the first time he fumbled in like 2 years. So I just don't foresee. I foresee them cleaning those mistakes up, and I just don't think that Arizona can move the ball consistently on the LA Rams, especially especially with their simplistic offense. I'm not worried about Jalen Ramsey getting burnt, because I think he'll be knowing what to expect. One of 3 routes probably on whoever he matches up. And on the flip side, the Rams passing attack still pretty good. And especially they might be able to run the ball this week because, really only marquee guy is J.J. Watt on that Arizona front four. And, he's kind of been in and out. First game was dealing with an injury already. So as I hate to say it, who knows if you can depend on him to be there all game. And then even if they throw some crazy blitzes, I suspect, too, that the Rams can go Matthew Stafford especially and Sean McVay, they're going to go back to last year, see what Vance Joseph's tendencies are blitz-wise, and they'll be more ready for it this time. I just think that the Rams, this is a very good chance to have a bounce-back game, a good, huge road win, and I think they'll capitalize on that. So I think that they'll win and cover the 4.5 points against the Cardinals. I just wasn't impressed at all with the Cardinals last week. I think it was just more the Raiders ran out of gas defensively, and offensively, though, they kind of just ran out of tricks. So huge NFC West matchup there, and another difference for John and I. So we'll see if there are any more after this. But speaking of their division, we're going to Seattle next. The Seattle Seahawks are surprisingly favored. I guess when you see their opponent, not as surprising. But the Seahawks are favored by 3.5 at Seattle against the Atlanta Falcons. John, who do you have here for this game that, let's be honest, not many people outside of Seattle and Atlanta really care about?
I care about it just because I need Kyle Pitts to start doing some stuff in fantasy. But other than that,
I benched him for Freiermuth this week. I got to see it.
Wow.
Well, Freiermuth's been falling in the end zone twice. So I'm like, listen, at least he'll fall. Maybe Freiermuth might fall in the end zone, but
it's true. But I'm sipping the Kyle Pitts bounce back Kool-Aid. Hopefully Arthur Smith doesn't kill me again. I saw this meme. It was this guy, and he's like being held back by all these people, and they're holding his eyes open, and it said, "Me being forced to watch Kyle Pitts block by Arthur Smith."
Yeah, come on.
Anyway, I'm going to go with the Falcons here. I'm kind of surprised that Seattle's favored by 3.5 because usually the home field advantage is like 2.5 points. Maybe this is because Seattle's just such a tough place to play because of the noise that they got 3.5. But I don't think on an even field, like if you're truly putting the home field advantage up to 3.5, I don't think these teams are even on a neutral field. I think that Atlanta's better. They almost beat the Saints, and I know that almost is a tough way to judge teams, but they almost beat the Saints. They almost beat the Rams. I think their offense has shown the ability to move the ball against better defenses than Seattle's. And so I just don't know who on Seattle's going to step up to stop Drake London, to potentially stop Kyle Pitts if they actually use him, to stop Cordell Patterson, and to stop Marcus Mariota. I don't think they have the pass rush to make Mariota feel any sort of pressure and get him to make bad decisions. I don't think that they have the secondary to really compete with Drake London or Kyle Pitts. So I'm going to take Atlanta here. I do worry a little bit about Atlanta's defense because they have been pretty porous, but at the same time, Geno Smith is a game manager. Like, he's not going to go out and light you up. I think DK Metcalf could potentially, have a tough go with AJ Terrell on the outside. So I don't know. I'm going with Atlanta here just because I don't think that Seattle is as good as the spread is indicating. I'm taking Atlanta to at least cover, but honestly, I think they're going to win this game.
I'm with you. I think Atlanta at least is a very favorable spread. I think if they lose, it's going to be within 3, and wouldn't be shocked if they win here. Piggybacking off as you mentioned, Seattle's offense just not creative, and as of thus far, they haven't really been able to run the ball. Heck, they haven't really been patient with the run, which is weird because usually that's like they're really stubborn about running the ball, especially at least in the Russell Wilson era. I think Atlanta their defense is shown to be solid enough to get stops. So I think they'll be able to stop this simplistic offense. And then, like you mentioned on the flip side, Atlanta just has a few more weapons than Seattle at the moment. Maybe if Jamal Adams were there, okay, maybe, Jamal Adams would be kind of more the QB spy type and, maybe match up with Pitts now and then, but he's not there. He's on injured reserve, out for the year. And yeah, especially you mentioned, I'm hoping Kyle Pitts bounces back, and I'm not benching because it's part of the reason why I bench him is like I just kind of want to see it to believe it. I got to see the bounce back happen. I've trusted it too many times. But nonetheless, I think we both agree Atlanta's probably going to cover here, if not probably win this one. So we'll see if we are right. But now we go to the final afternoon game, and that is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They are at Tampa, favored by 3.5, hosting my Green Bay Packers. Let me pull up. I know there are a bunch of injuries on this one. In regards to Tampa Bay, Carlton Davis, their cornerback, questionable. Brashad Perryman, Scotty Miller, Julio Jones, all questionable. Julio did not play or did not practice, at least today as of Wednesday, so that could be huge. Also, Russell Gage, one of their other receivers, also a limited participant. Chris Godwin didn't practice. He's listed as questionable. Leonard Fournette also listed as questionable. And one of their tackles, Donovan Smith, is also questionable, so that could be huge. And then for Green Bay, I should know off the top of my head, but I don't think there's really any one of note. Elton Jenkins, he played last week. He's listed as questionable. Christian Watson, same. And Alan Zard, but he also played. And Bakhtiari, who knows if he'll be back this week, but he's listed as questionable. So, John, the Battle of the Bays, who do you got?
I'm going San Francisco here.
This is Green Bay, Tampa Bay.
Oh, sorry. San Francisco. You said the Bay, and I thought of like Golden State and the Bay and San Francisco. And that's the next game. Anyway, I'm going with Green Bay here, the Packers. Tampa just has a lot of injuries. Hakeem Hicks just got injured, and he's a pretty key cog on the defensive line.
Thanks, ESPN.
But also,
forgot about that.
Yeah. Yes. ESPN's injury report has been kind of whack. I wonder if maybe they're only showing people that are like questionable. I don't know. Maybe like if they're on IR.
I even pulled up the full one, and yes, he was. He's just farther down the list. Sorry.
Anyway, Hakeem Hicks is not playing, and I still think he's not like as important as Vita Vea by any means, but I have not been super impressed with Tampa's ability to stop the run. Like even last week, the Saints didn't gash them, but I was watching that game pretty closely, and there was just like a lot of plays where it felt like the Tampa Bay run defense of old would have destroyed Mark Ingram, and he would kind of get past the defensive line and he'd hit a linebacker and he'd take him an extra 3 yards. And all of a sudden you got an 8-yard gain that it feels like the prime Tampa run defense would have held for 3. And so just that little extra yard difference, AJ Dillon, Aaron Jones, the ability to keep them both fresh, the different styles that they both have, the creative run schemes that LaFleur can employ. I think the Packers win this game, and I think they're going to want to get revenge for what happened the last time they played them, which was Tampa Bay just absolutely shredding them. So we'll see what happens, but I'm going to go with the Packers to win here. Also, the Tampa receiving core just kind of worries me because Evans is obviously out. They signed Cole Beasley, which is like, who knows if he even plays, if he has an impact here. Outside of that, Tom was very upset about like Scotty Miller and the other receivers in their performance at the end of that Saints game. Rashad Perryman was like the only one he could rely on. And I don't know. I think Julio Jones is supposed to be back, but he's questionable, and I'm not betting on him to actually play because it's Julio Jones, and unfortunately he just can't stay healthy. So I'm going with Green Bay.
So I'm going with a little bit of a curse here, doing the whole, I guess, I don't know what the phrase is. But bring back the jinx, okay? I'm going with Tampa Bay. I went with Chicago last week, and Packers won, beat the spread. And listen, like I said before, I'm willing to go 0-17 in Packer games if this helps. So yeah, I'm picking Tampa Bay, technically. I am worried about the Packer offense. I think, especially if Tampa Bay doesn't have to worry about the passing game. I think they can just invest more in the run game. They're not that far off from being the number one run defense, and I'm sure if they don't have anyone that can scare them on the outside, there won't be any issues. And so that's a concern. And it being in Tampa, always helps. And then on the flip side, although they may be missing receivers, and missing linemen, like, I don't know. It just feels like one of those games, especially after last week, where like Tom Brady finds a way and they win, and everyone's like, man, look at Tom. And I think the offense will do just enough Tampa Bay wise to get the ball rolling and move the ball. And honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if Green Bay's offense struggles and everyone's like, what's going on with Aaron Rodgers in the offense? And kind of like how a few years ago when we got beat down by the Bucs, then I don't think it'd be that bad of a beat down. It'll probably be more like a 20 to like 10 if so, or maybe 20 to 6. But yeah, and also last week the Bears had success running the ball against the Packers, and I think it might be a wash, especially after the injuries, in terms of like which line's better at this point. But I think we could definitely say Leonard Fournette definitely better than David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert, and I just have concerns there. Green Bay Packer run defense is always giving me nightmares or PTSD, because one week it looks great, but then when you actually play a really good team, it doesn't look great that week. So yeah, I'm like I said, I'm kind of invoking the jinx. I'm picking the Bucs. I would love for my Packers to win, and if this is what it takes, then I'll do it. So technically, I'm picking Tampa Bay, and I'll take that L if so, and if not, it's a win-win for me. So now we move to the Sunday night game, which surprisingly seems a little bit lackluster this week, but who knows? Maybe we'll live up to expectation. It is at Denver, at Mile High. The Broncos, they are favored by 3.5, hosting the San Francisco 49ers. Obviously for the Niners, no Trey Lance. It is now Jimmy G. Trey Lance out for the rest of the season, unfortunately. George Kittle still listed as questionable, dealing with that groin issue. Eric Armstead listed as questionable. One of their tackles, Brunskill, also listed as questionable. And then for the Broncos, pull that up. Pat Surtain, questionable. Jerry Jeudy also was dealing with a rib injury. He did not practice as of Wednesday, listed as questionable. And same with KJ Hamler. He was a limited participant. And Randy Gregory. Although he did play last week, he is listed as questionable going into this game. So, John, who do you have between these two?
I am going with the San Francisco 49ers. I kind of spoiled that on our last one. I just think that with Jimmy G, like I kind of mentioned, and it's really unfortunate for Trey Lance. I really hope he can come back healthy and kill it. But I think that in the immediate, he is an upgrade over Trey Lance. And Denver, they just got to prove it to me. They haven't proven it to me. I think the time issues that Nathaniel Hackett's still kind of working through, the inability to score in the red zone. I don't know. I'm not super confident in them yet. And I think that the Niners, they're going to have a different energy with Jimmy Garoppolo there that makes maybe that veteran group feel like it's go time. So short and simple, I'm taking the Niners. I need Denver to prove it to me before I can pick them again, because they just have not been impressive whatsoever.
Yeah, Denver's offense has kind of been sputtering at times. They just didn't see any rhythm or flow. Not really patient with the run game, but even if they are this week, this is probably not the best week to do so. We know that Niners front four is really good, and especially they have experience of chasing and playing against Russell Wilson too. And then, yeah, like you mentioned, I think San Francisco's offense will be more efficient. Will probably move the ball better than they would have with Trey Lance. May not be as dynamic, but like you said, I think they'll execute better on that side of the ball. And I think too, really, I'm trying to think. The Denver defense really hasn't played any marquee offenses. So, yeah, I'm worried that, Niners get off to a good start. And then now Russell and the Broncos are one-dimensional. And we haven't seen much out of the pass game anyways. And if they don't have Jerry Jeudy or hurt Jerry Jeudy, I just think that the Niners will be all over what they're going to do. And it's going to be a rough day in the office for Russell Wilson. And his tenure here will not get off to a good start. And even if Denver wins, somehow, finds a spark, I just don't think that they'll win by more than 3. So, yeah, I'm going with San Fran here. I would pick them to win, but obviously they're the underdog. And I know you feel the same way probably. So, one of the rare agreements of the week, we are both going San Francisco for the Sunday night game. And now we move to last but not least, the Monday nighter divisional matchup, New York Giants at New York, favored by 3.5. Hosting Cooper Rush and your Dallas Cowboys, John. So obviously I'm going to throw it to you. How you feeling about this one?
I'm pulling your strategy, and I'm taking the Giants here. I picked against them last week, and they won. And I picked them to win in week 1 or cover in week 1, and they lost. So, I'm taking the Giants here. I don't know. Even just in a real sense, I do worry a little bit that Saquon Barkley could potentially have some success because Leonard Fournette did in week 1. Now, the difference there is that Tom Brady is much more of a threat at quarterback, and so you can't devote as many resources. But I think that Brian Daboll is a smart enough offensive coordinator that he can at least maybe keep things safe for Daniel Jones. And as long as the tackles hold up, which Micah Parsons is going to get sacks, like that's not a question. But if the tackles can hold up for the most part, then I think that the Giants could be all right offensively, and Saquon could have a pretty decent game. And also, once again, the offense, the run game just has not really impressed me so far. The Giants have been able to have success against Christian McCaffrey and Derrick Henry so far, who are both better running backs than Zeke or Tony Pollard. So I still got to see it to believe it in this offensive group. And with Cooper Rush, I know that people are going to really ride high on him last week, and they won the game, but it's a new opponent, and all of a sudden they got a little bit more film on you. Before, they only had one game, and that was against the Vikings. Now there's at least 2 games, and so they can maybe see a little bit more of what the offense is going to want to try and do when you're in there. I'm going to go with the Giants.
All right. Well, hopefully I don't jinx it for you, but I'm going with Dallas here. I think even if they don't win.
I took your team, so, it is what it is.
Anyways, I think if anything, I think Dallas has a good chance to win this game, but I think if anything, it's going to be close. This Giants offense has been good in spots, but it hasn't been, outwardly amazing and consistent. And especially with Dallas's defense, I think it's going to be the real test for their tackles going up against Lawrence and Micah Parsons. We've already seen Micah Parsons terrorize other teams. And I just think this Dallas defense is definitely the strong point. I think the squad that they're going to lean on in terms of that side of the ball. And I think we saw last week, it's like you said, they had a few more creative plays for Cooper Rush, and Cooper kind of managed the game pretty well, got into a good rhythm and flow, didn't mess anything up. And I think that's going to be the formula here, especially playing against Daniel Jones and with your defense, wreaking havoc with their creativity and different blitzes. I think we're going to see a couple Daniel Jones turnovers. I won't be shocked. Cooper Rush has 0, and that's just the difference in this game is that Dallas took care of the ball a little better. It was an ugly Monday night game, but they won. I know it's not great analysis there, but I think that's what's going to happen here in Dallas. Just, like I said, with Cooper Rush. And I think they'll obviously be patient with the run again, but might be tougher because I think this Giants, especially their interior with Leonard Williams and Dexter Lawrence, still, pretty solid guys in there. But nonetheless, I think they'll find ways to get Tony Pollard the ball, just get their playmakers the ball and do enough to win the game. So I am going Dallas. John going the Giants, trying to invoke the pod jinx. So we'll see how that works out for him. Regardless, win-win. Unless Dallas, if Dallas wins, you cover. Anyways, those are the spreads for the week. You try to count the differences. I see 1, 2, 3.
I think we have 9.
I get 9 again.
Yep, 9.
All right.
I counted twice. 9.
9 differences. With our luck, it'll be split like 5-4, and you'll still have a lead. Anyways, other than that, those are our picks against the spread for week 3. Feel free to share yours against our spreads. Obviously, the spreads will change as as closer to the games, and unfortunately, we can't really we can change it, John and I, between each other, but it doesn't help for the pod content. So you're welcome, y'all. We're staying true to our picks. But anyways, if you want to catch more of us, we're on YouTube, obviously, and our YouTube channel is Shut Up and Ball. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers, getting closer and closer there. John and I guess Squam's our editor, our part-time editor, are a good friend too. They've been doing a great job editing our videos and such. And then obviously, if you want to listen to the full podcast, that is on all podcast streaming platforms. Once again, Shut Up and Ball there. You want to see our socials? That is Instagram is our main one. At Shut Up and Ball Pod. We're inching closer to 3K. That's 3,000 followers there. And we basically post daily there as well. And John will answer some fancy stuff and try to help you out if you're reasonable at least. And then Twitter, TikTok at Shut Up and Ball there. So, and we have a Facebook page too, Shut Up and Ball, which is Shut Up and Ball. So nonetheless, that is our picks for week 3. Hopefully, unless you are playing against one of our teams, your team wins. And hopefully, once again, unless you have the fantasy players that are going against me, hopefully your fantasy teams do well. But nonetheless, we'll see you all next week to react to week 3 and hopefully react to me going 16-0 in our picks. But that probably won't happen. Enjoy your weekend, everybody.